Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, as per usual, at whatever time it is that you are taking in this, our newly dubbed public access podcast, CUNY BMI Dialogues. This time around, we are honoring fatherhood, we are honoring fathers, and we're talking to four great dads who have done their best and have continued to provide mentorship and fatherhood advice to not just our students, but their own children. As always, our seasoned veteran, Dr. Jeff Gardere, member of the CUNY BMI Advisory Board, has graced us with his presence as our host, and he will lead us through the conversation with three dynamic parents in different spaces, not just in life, but in their raising of their children. So I will reduce myself so that Dr. Gardere can come and lead our conversation. Dr. Gardere, please take it away.
All right, Jorge, thank you so very much. And good day, everyone. As you know, my name is Dr. Jeff Gardere, better known as America's Psychologist. I'm board certified and a member of the CUNY BMI Executive Board, and I am welcoming you yet again to another exciting and informative CUNY BMI dialogue. And today, we will be discussing fatherhood. Yes, joys, challenges, rewards of raising our children. By the way, our podcast today is dedicated to exploring the vital, the nuanced dimensions of fatherhood and parenting within the African Caribbean diaspora. And in this episode, really, one of the things that I think we really want to focus on is bringing together our experience as fathers, as professionals. This is really a powerful panel of seasoned and emerging Black fathers, each a model of integrity, leadership, and resilience. And we really do want to engage in a candid, insightful conversation on the complexities of parenting, fatherhood, in an era marked by Black men, and I know we're living it, strategically marginalized and often relegated to America's permanent underclass. In many ways, this leaves family structures, especially the Black family structures, our fathers, under relentless assault. Our children then suffer, right? They are the collateral damage, deprived of the essential, the foundational guidance and leadership that they need in order to be successful in this great country. And against the backdrop of growing social and economic uncertainty as we live it each and every day, it is now more essential than ever that these men who we have on this podcast offer not just lived experiences, but tangible guidance. That's what they're really here for, on cultivating a culture of fatherhood leadership. So today's not going to be the typical lecture that some of us who are in the teaching profession like to do. This really will be a conversation, an exciting conversation, rooted in truth, wisdom, and shared mission of nurturing strong families and communities amidst adversity. So, let's get right to it. Joining me in this important conversation is Mr. Ramón Javier. Ramón is a lifelong New Yorker, proud of his Afro-Latinx roots. He's a member of Prep for Prep. Ramón graduated, by the way, from the Hackley School, Williams College, and received his master's in education from Teachers College and Columbia University. And Ramón sits on the boards of the International Boys School Coalition and the New York State Association of Independent Schools. And as well, Ramón will be joining the full board of trustees of the Grace Church School in the fall of 2025. And he is in his third year as head of school at the great George Jackson Academy. Ramón is married. He has two amazing kids, though when we talk with him today, we'll find out how amazing they truly are. And as you could see, he's wearing a jersey that is associated with one of the best teams in baseball. I don't care what anyone has to say. Of course, our great Amazons, the New York Mets, and he is a diehard New York Mets fan. Also joining us is Mr. Kevin Dillon. He's a student. He's earned his Associate of Applied Science in Mechanical Engineering from Hostos Community College at CUNY in the spring of 2024. Kevin will not admit to it, but he was known as a nerd, especially being in mechanical engineering. But you know what we say to nerds these days now, right? Hey, sexy. He's currently attending the City College of New York School of Education and the Division of Science to pursue a BA in Science Learning and Engagement. He's a fellow of the New York City Men Teacher Assistant Program and has served as the Hostos Community College rep on the Student Council of the Black Male Initiative. And talking about the Mets, Mr. Met himself. That's right, but just a smaller head. Mr. Donovan Mitchell, the one and only. He's a senior director of DEI, which is still a good word in my book, and player relations. And for the New York Mets, he has a long history in professional baseball, starting as a minor league player with the Houston Astros in 1992. He also coached and managed in the Mets minor league system. He attended, by the way, the University of North Carolina at Charlotte and Drexel University. However, his proudest achievement is being a husband and a father. I think you all know his son, Donovan Vernell Mitchell Jr. As a matter of fact, when I went on the wikis to look up Donovan Sr., Donovan Jr. kept coming up. So this is a proud testament as to the work he's done as a father. And as you know, Donovan Vernell Mitchell Jr., all-star player in the NBA, nicknamed the Spider. And as well, Donovan has a lovely daughter, super talented, super intelligent, and she's attending American University, is one of the league's best players in lacrosse. She was named to the Patriot League, all-league second team as a defender. And I do have to say this before we go to our panel. Donovan Sr. was quoted as saying, "My children mean the world to me. They are the reason I do what I do. They are my driving force that keeps me going every day. It has been a pleasure watching them grow, watching them develop into two young adults that they are. And that is truly the role of the Black father." So, Kevin, Donovan, Ramón, we welcome you all today. And why don't we start off with what do you believe is the role of the Black father, especially as we see that there are now cultural narratives that try to minimize or, in some ways, erase the importance of the Black father? And how would you respond to that? And Kevin, why don't we go ahead and start with you on that one?
Okay, thank you. The role of the Black father. I think a guide, right, as the father as a guide, um, protector, um, and I think servant, assistant, right, to help uh those in your charge, in this case, your children, to achieve their goals, to find themselves, right? I think it's a lot more to it, but I think that's how I would start.
And Donovan, what would you say is the essence of that right now, especially when we see some of these very negative cultural depictions of Black fathers, and as we know, what may be happening as far as an assault on Black history that has been ongoing for quite some time, but especially now?
I just think, I agree with Kevin with what he's saying, to be there, to be the protector, to be the example. And for me, I just feel like you have to put yourself in position to where your kids see you as um the example of what black males are supposed to be. You want your daughter, and I know we haven't mentioned my daughter, but my daughter Jordan, um she's actually at Columbia University, but I want her to understand what a male's role in her life should be. When she's
Hmm.
looking for a husband or a boyfriend, what she's going to accept, what she's not going to accept. And that should be from lessons that she's learned from her father. She
Yeah.
should be able to say, hey, I want someone to be like my father, or I want someone to have the same morals and values that my dad has. For a son, I want him to be able to project that when he chooses a woman to be in his life, for her to be able to look at him and say, hey, he's a provider, he's a protector, he does the right things, he treats me like a lady. And to be totally honest, there are things that I've done as a husband, as a father, to where I hope my son saw, because he saw some of the things that I was vulnerable at, some of the things that I wasn't good at as a father. And maybe he can look at those and say, well, I see where my dad has failed. And I'll be honest, I've told him there are things that I failed at. And hey, dad didn't handle this the right way. And hopefully he's learned from that. And hopefully my daughter's learned from not only my successes, but some of my failures.
And Ramon, why do you feel in this time and place that we're in, just as Kevin and Donovan talked about, the incredible responsibilities that a father, especially a black father, what do you see as the importance of that in this day and time that we're in?
Um, First, thank you, Kevin and Donovan, for those comments. I think it sets up really nicely what I want to add. I'm a father, and then I also run an all boys middle school in the East Village for low income and low wealth kids, which is predominantly kids of color. So there are a lot of black boys in our school, and I think right now it's particularly important. There's a lot of data out there about the crisis of men and boys, and how that's impacting men and boys, from college acceptances and job placements. I think it's not urgent for us because I think it's been an issue for, I think, the entire time we've been in this country. And so it's not a new issue for us as black men. I think what's really important now, I think the responsibility I feel like I carry as a black father is modeling the healthy relationships, right? What does that mean to have a healthy relationship with other men, with anybody of any gender? And at the crux of that, I think, is really, do I understand what's my relationship with my own emotions, right? Like, in what ways can I show vulnerability, right? Can I tell someone, hey, what you did hurt, and this is why it hurt? Can I acknowledge in the ways that I made mistakes so that I failed, right? That being able to model that, especially for my kids and for the students that I'm responsible for, I think that that's my ultimate responsibility, is being able to say, hey, this is how you can go about having a healthy relationship, because I never learned that as a kid. Growing up in Dykeman, in Washington Heights, in New York City, I didn't learn that. I was told that you could be strong, you could be promiscuous, and that's about it. I wasn't told that I was allowed to be sad or upset, or hurt. Like, I wasn't allowed to think of that. And I think as men, as human beings, we have full access to the full range of emotions. And if we don't practice being able to talk about that, especially with other men, I think it limits us as human beings. And so I think that the ultimate responsibility right now, in particular for black men, is to model what it means to have a healthy relationship, and not just in the good times, but when it's difficult, and especially for young boys. And to Donovan's point, for girls, I see myself as the primary. I'm the first relationship that my kids are gonna have with a man. Full stop. And so I have the burden and the responsibility and the honor of showing them, hey, this is what a healthy relationship is with a man. He's gonna treat you this way. He's gonna behave in this way, and it centers around that idea of being vulnerable, because there's a lot of strength in people.
Yeah, and what we're seeing is, and I have to say this as a psychologist, given where we are in this day and time, that there is a lot of stress on people of color, on black men, in this case, specifically. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, the collateral damage is on our children, because not only do they see us stressed out as far as maintaining who we are as black men, but in some ways, I'm sure that they have to feel that themselves, that if we are under stress, then somehow that trickles down to them. And so, Kevin, it brings me to you. First of all, let me ask you, do you have children?
I do. I have two girls. One is 18 and one is 13.
Okay, so this is, of course, you have skin in the game too. So let me ask you,
Thank
what's
you.
your greatest concern regarding your own children's mental health, their emotional well-being, their sense of self-worth, especially if they see that we are, in many ways, black culture is being attacked as we speak right now.
My concern is great. I think especially at the age that my children are, um, you know, early teen, late teen, right? Like serious developmental stage. And I think it's a shock to the system. I think the recent turn of events in the political world and the way like we've spoken to our children since they were small about the system, about racism, about systematic racism and things like that. But to see the abrupt shift now is a bit concerning. I would hope that we've raised them and we've put enough into them and raised them with enough self-confidence so that they can ride this wave out and not be completely affected by it. But there's no way, right, that we're living through it. We talk about it with them all the time, daily, unfortunately. So yeah, it's a difficult wave to ride right now, honestly.
Do you find, and I'll throw this out to the panel, do you find that particularly family, not just what we're doing as fathers, but family as a unit, is that an essential foundation with regard to the emotional, intellectual, moral development of our children? And when I say black family, the culture of that black family. And if it is something that you do agree with or disagree with, what might that look or not look like?
Oh, so I'll jump on this one quick. I think family, depending on how we define it, is obviously important, right? But the definition of it can has evolved, at least in my view, right? Family can be a regular, not regular, but like a nuclear common family that we're expecting. But it can also be any situation where a person find themselves in a loving, caring environment, right? And that is obviously super important. Being supported emotionally and physically and everything is super important. I think that culture is important, but culture can also be, depending on how we look at it, culture can also be detrimental as well. So
How,
it's
how can it be detrimental when you say culture can be detrimental?
because there's certain cultural aspects, certain um rigidities in certain cultures that don't allow children to fully express themselves, if you
And
understand.
Kevin, are we talking about in any way black culture?
Yes, yes, I'm talking about Black culture. I'm a Afro-Caribbean descent, and my family is not like this. We're very liberal and free, but there are families that I know that are quite restrictive. That that the children that while the children are loved and they are comforted, there are certain emotional damages that come from certain boxes that we might create within culture. If
And
that
Ramon, do you see that in your experience as Caribbean and Latinx, as far as your upbringing or your upbringing of your children?
I mean, growing up, my family is from the Dominican Republic. And respect was obviously very important. But my father wasn't around for a variety of reasons. I did have a stepfather in my life who was present and he did model some very positive things for me. But one of the things, I mean, growing up in the way I grew up, I was going to this 5-day boarding school in Westchester. So I would come home on Friday afternoon, right? Back to Dykeman, Washington Heights in the late 80s, early 90s, which all kinds of things were happening. And then during the week, I would go up to Westchester, very affluent, predominantly white school, a lot of resources, a lot of money. So I was kind of juggling both of those things. So I was really immersed in American culture, white American culture, and in Dominican culture, like, and juggling kind of both of those things. So I got to see positives and negatives from both sides. And to Kevin's point, the idea of being able to talk freely to my mom or my grandmother about what I thought, like, get out of here. Like, no, it was about being respectful. And that was very, very important. And that idea of being respectful also carried out onto the block. You always had to, it was about maintaining your respect between you and other men, and other people. But I really think of the idea of family and community. I think the distinction, like, my family is my family. That's my blood, and that is my family. Whether they were in my life or not, they're my family, right? Like, I have cousins, I have uncles that I have no relationship with, but they're my family technically. The idea of community has a different sense for me, in the sense that it's about what are the shared values that you have and that you're going to kind of agree upon, and you're going to live those values, and you're going to uphold them and hold each other accountable for those values. I think that's a little bit different, and I think that can carry a different kind of power. So the idea of, like, your chosen family, I think of that as community, right? Because that's active, right?
Right, right.
You're engaging in that, you're agreeing to that. There's kind of a contract, an implicit one that you're abiding by. And so when I think of family, and what my wife and I tried to create for my kids is, okay, home is safe, right? Home is safe. Right? We're not going to ever disrespect each other. You're not going to come out your mouth and start yelling at me and cursing me. That's not going to happen. But there will be room for you to ask us questions about the decisions that we made. I am going to be honest about some of the mistakes that I made with you. I'm going to give you some insight into what I'm doing. I want home to be a place they can always go to and always be able to talk to us about the really difficult things, because otherwise they're going to go and talk to other people. They're going to talk to their friends, strangers, and I don't know what they're going to tell them. I don't know if they have the same values that my wife and I have. So I want them to come home, right? I want family to be safe in that way, safe in the full sense of that word, where you can question, and you can be open and honest. And so I think of it family in those two ways, right? There's the family that you inherit, that's your blood. But I also think of the contrast for me is community. That's what you choose, that's what you agree upon. And I think, we can carry so much trauma as Black folks, like, just that we've never dealt with, that gets passed on to generation to generation. And so there's also that conscious decision of saying, you know what, I'm going to stop and think about what I've inherited, the trauma and unresolved things that are coming from my ancestors. And I'm going to try to understand how that has impacted me, so that I don't pass that on to my kids. I think that's a real project, I think, for men, Black men in particular, as well.
And Donovan, obviously you've done a great job with your two children, preparing them to be in the prime time, both very successful, of course. But are there any concerns that maybe there's something that you may have missed given today's racial climate that may be impacting their mental health or their emotional well-being? Going back to an earlier question that I sort of slightly referred to, as to, do you feel that their mental health, your preparation for them, will help them with regard to maintaining mental health? Again, especially in today's climate.
When you talk about that, I think I'm more concerned, and I can't say I'm more concerned. I'm more concerned about my daughter in this situation. Both of them went to Greenwich Country Day, which was a predominantly white school, but they had a very good educational background, and then they went to Brewster Academy. But my son he was at a predominantly white school, but he played basketball in the city. So he had the mixture of being around Black culture. He had a mixture of being around white culture, and he learned how to deal in both worlds. My daughter didn't have that opportunity. She went to a predominantly white school, but she really didn't have that system where she could, a lot of black friends. And so I'm really concerned about her. She seems to be doing very well. Don't get me wrong, but I do wonder, how she feels culturally when she's in those situations where
Hmm.
she might be the only black face in the crowd, and how she feels about herself. For years, black culture, we accepted it, but sometimes it wasn't accepted outside. So we do a lot of code switching. We do a lot of, walking into the rooms, and we're different. And I don't want her to feel like because of the way her hair looks or the way her skin looks, she's not accepted, or, she's not, feeling a certain way about herself like someone else might. Like I said, my son's around black, white, Latin, Hispanic, people all the time, and a lot of times she's not. So that's where I'm worried about her mental health, because sometimes we're not accepted, and as black women, sometimes they're not accepted even, they're the minority of the minority. So,
Hmm.
I'm concerned about her and how she feels about herself. And, my phone is always on, my door is always open. Whenever she wants to talk, I'm there. I'm always reaching out to her, making sure that she's good. And I think her brother does an outstanding job of making sure she's always included and she's always front facing. And I think my ex-wife does the same thing. She does an excellent job of making sure that my daughter feels strong about herself. But that's where my biggest concern is.
Yeah. And
Jeff,
you talked to, yeah,
Jeff,
go
can
ahead.
I ask? You mentioned the code switching piece, and I definitely worried about that with my
Thank you.
daughter.
Yeah.
Because I had to do so much of it going from the high school that I went to back to Washington Heights, and I've really evolved in that concept, man. Because what I learned was like all of those parts were with me all the time, right? Like whatever room we enter, we carry all of us in that space, and then it becomes a question: what parts of you do you want to access? And I really like, I spent a lot of time thinking about the code switching, and it's like, well, I'm all of these things all of the time. And so you might hear me say apropos and dope in the same sentence because that's me, right? I'm all of those things, right? And so, really have tried to work on having my kids, the whole idea of bring your full self to work. No, I'm not saying that. Like don't bring your full self to work. Keep some of it at home. But am I switching or am I accessing different parts of myself? Especially like when I think about it from a school context, getting our boys from GJ ready to go off to
Hmm.
schools, these
Hmm.
independent schools that they go to, and being like, look, you can be you, right? You can be you, not the full self, because nobody needs to be their full self in these kind of shared spaces. But if you don't, like, I feel like I had to sacrifice so much of myself in the spaces that I was in when I was doing so much code switching that it was at the end of the day, it wasn't worth it. So then it became, I'm all of these things, and I'm gonna access what I need, but I'm not gonna suppress anything, and I'm not gonna pretend. And I know that's not what you're saying, Donovan. I'm not gonna pretend. Like, I like hip hop, and the first two tapes that I bought were Metallica and Big Daddy Kane. Like that was the truth, right? Like, and so I'm gonna carry that in there. It's just the code switching piece was just like, yeah, man, I've just evolved on that. And when I think about my kids and my role as father, is like trying to help my kids understand who is your authentic self and being mindful of what parts you access and irrespective of the space.
So let me drop it back. Donovan, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I just think that, as black men, you know, we have to pretty much adapt to a lot of situations.
Talk to me, Donovan, about black fathers and what we need to teach about code switching. A little bit of what Ramon says. For him, it's super inclusive. You can be all those things. So code switching is not a negative thing. And of course, Donovan, you didn't express it in that way. But for you as a black father, and I'll go to you, Kevin, also, how do you teach your children to do that code switching without being harmed mentally? But Donovan, go ahead.
Well, I don't think it's something to where you have to be harmed, but you have to. And I think it's one of those things you just have to understand the room that you're entering. And I'll tell you a really quick story. I had a meeting with about 10 of 10 black friends, and the way we came into the meeting, the way we're joking with each other and laughing and everything else, I'm like, that's us being unique. That's us being ourselves. But I'm like, we couldn't walk into a meeting at work the way we walked into our meeting together. And
Right.
I think we have to understand that, we're unique in those situations, but we adapt very well. And I always want my kids to be able to adapt to any situation. And I know the word code switching might be a little bit, not what we want to say, but we adapt very well.
Yeah.
And I think that might be better than code switching because it seems like we're doing something that might not be right. But I think we're adaptable, and I want to teach my kids how to be adaptable. I think my son's very adaptable. He understands the audience that he's speaking to. Like if I was speaking to a gym full of black basketball players, I know how I would be able to talk. But if I was talking to a gym full of white baseball players, there's certain things I would say and they would understand it, but there's certain things I would say that they wouldn't understand. So maybe I don't bring that to that gym. Maybe I bring it to the other gym.
And you're right.
I hope I said
It
it the
is
right
a
way.
it yeah no it is a balance because when we use that term code switching, which I find nothing offensive about it at all. I think it's a bit of a superpower. It's like I know how to play the piano. I know how to speak French in addition to English. I know how to speak Spanish. I know how to be able to speak in different languages in certain situations. And I think the negative part that some people have is that we're the only ones as black people who happen to know what we're talking about and we're keeping something from other people, which we're not. It's really about what you're saying. It's adapting to the situation and being able to move forward and maneuver in that situation in a very intelligent way, being authentic. But Ramon, as you talked about, having all of the different facets of yourself and you choose what it is that you want to put out there. Kevin, I know you're chomping at the bit to say something about this.
Yeah, so it's the the whole topic of code switching itself is something that when I think about it, I don't think about it, with those two words, but I often think about the complexities of just being Black in America and the things that we do that now we name, we have cool names for them, right? Like the sweeper, like it's been around forever, right? But like so I've never I don't recall ever like teaching my daughters to do it. It's just like it's a, as you say, adaptable, like like Darwinian type of evolutionary thing, like we just do. So like my kids, they oldest was born in Brooklyn, but spent her early time in the Bronx, up in the North Bronx. And then, their mother did some great research and found a good school in District 2 next to in the same neighborhood as Ramon's. And so they've been able to go to school to go to a very diverse school. So I think they just learn how to flow, through different cultures just organically, right?
Yeah, and they learn it as they go through life. I mean, this is one of the things that makes us as black people successful, that we have the not only the intellectual but the social IQ, right? It's called EQ, emotional quotient, to be able to walk into a room, as you were saying, Donovan, and know, study what's going on and be able to move through it. I mean, it's sad that we need to do that, but it is essential. And I believe it gives us increasing strength. So, in some ways, I see that we can, in many ways, as black fathers, whether we're saying it verbally or modeling it, teaching our children how to be able to adapt, as you would say, Ramon, to these different situations. So, with that, I'll ask either of you, what principles or practices remain constant and consistent for you as a black father in leading your family? What is it that you are known for? Not in the world because you're all worldly, but within your own homes as Black fathers, that has been a consistent part of your personality, a consistent part of being a father that has helped your children?
Uh, I think I'll say a couple of seconds. I think what Donovan and Ramon said earlier about showing vulnerability, I think that's
That's big.
yeah,
That's
and
big.
I think it goes with what I was talking about with culture because that was not part of the culture as far as I knew, right? Um,
That's right.
Parents, especially men, did not show that.
Hmm.
That wasn't part of
Hmm.
the resume. You needed to be strong, you needed to provide, but so I think I'll let Ramon go, but I think that was a big one for me.
Ramon?
My wife says that I'm a middle school boy trapped in the body of a grown man. Um, so the joy, man, joy. I feel like there's so many things to be stressed out, right, about as black men. What did James
Black
Baldwin say?
people?
As
Yes.
black people, what did James Baldwin said? Like we could be angry all the time at America if we wanted to. I'm misquoting it, but that's the kind of essence of it. And we could be stressed out all the time, and being able to kind of show some levity or bring some joy into my home for my family is, I think it's important for me to model. I think it's also healthy for me. As a school leader, I
Oh,
carry
yes.
stress just in general, the times in which we're living. And so I think one of the things that is really important for me is to bring joy to my kids, my wife, and my family.
Donovan?
I think early when my kids were born, I was always on the road, coaching, playing. So I didn't really get a chance to build that foundation like I wanted to with my kids. And it did hurt me, it hurt our relationship. But I think as they've gotten older, I think they've started to understand, my journey. We've had some really outstanding conversations, and now I know that they know Dad's always available for them. Dad is always going to be there. We don't have to talk on the phone every day. A lot of times when you're dealing with kids in their 20s now they have their own lives and everything else, but they know they can call me for anything. And they know that, just recently my son asked me a question about, me being a father and some of the things that I've had to deal with. And it was like, wow, we're having a conversation that we've never had before. So now I think they're willing to ask me questions or willing to tell me things that are going on in their lives. So I think just being present and being available to your kids is outstanding. I love what they're doing with their lives, but I don't overcrowd them, but they always know that dad is there. On the other end, they can call me right now in the middle of this Zoom, and I'll answer the phone, and and they know it. So I think being present is key. And early in their lives, I wasn't able to be there as much as I can be now, but I'm present.
But as they say, better late than never. I'm so glad that you're there. We need to be present as Black fathers. And I think it's also important, as you all have said, to be able to teach consistent lessons, to tell them about our lives, because I don't think we speak enough of, maybe in frustration, we may talk to our spouses or others, but do we really sit down with our children and tell them what the Black experience is, has been in this country, what it is now, and what may be the fallout of where we are today? And therefore, by telling our stories of the challenges, of the adversity, of the love that we have for our families and for this country, but how we're often turned away, I think many of those things really do perhaps prepare them for what it is that they will be dealing with in 2025 and beyond. I just want to share one thing with the three of you. What I see as a Black father, I like to say, I'm a Black father. I'm like the old man in the shoe. I have so many kids, I don't know what to do. I have six of them, three boys, three girls, from the ages of 32 down to 8 years old. Um, And as a black father, and I want to know how you all feel about this. And Donovan, I think you addressed this a little bit as you did, Ramon, too. I think it's so important that the lesson I teach them as a black man is how to love myself as a black person, but also how to love their mother or their mothers. There are two mothers in my family, previous, previous marriage. No, I'm not having one of those, he has three wives and that. No, no, no. Previous mom, I was married to, and previous mom I'm married to now. So the bottom line is, showing that love and compassion to their mothers so that when they go into their relationships, they either choose a loving person to be their partner, and you all talked about this, or being a loving partner themselves, even in a world where they are facing adversity each and every day. And I think that's really, really, really important. Thoughts?
Well, I can speak on this part. Just having Don and Jordan's mom in their lives. I don't think I did a really good enough job of displaying what a man or a father should be to my kids. Because I was always on the road, always coming home, bumping heads, and it did end up leading to our divorce. But I have to say that she did an outstanding job in my absence of not being there. But my kids know that, it wasn't like dad wasn't there because he was hanging out. Dad was
Mm-hmm.
working. Dad was
Mm-hmm.
always working. And I think it's important for them to understand that, hey, I understand my failures as a husband, as a father, but I've grown from that. And if they can see that, hey, you can make some mistakes in your life and you can still grow from it, I think that's where they're accepting that, hey, dad's taking responsibility for his failures. He's still present for us right now. And we've seen dad grow. And hopefully, if they know that, hey, if I fail, I can still grow because look what dad has done. Look where dad has gone. He's still respected at work. People still love him. He's still hardworking. He's still there. He's still there for us. And he did have some setbacks, and he's always there. I think I think when they see the vulnerability and that you can still come out on top, I think hopefully I've set that example for them.
Donovan, I have to tell you, and it's not just because I want complimentary tickets to the Mets games, hint, hint, but I am really just, I admire completely your willingness, and I know Ramon and Kevin, you must do this in your own homes, to talk about your vulnerabilities, to talk about the things that you could have done better. To me, those are the major, major lessons versus, well, here you must do A, B, C, and D, but to talk about the things that perhaps you have some regrets about, some mistakes that you made, but how it's never too late to be able to change oneself to meet the challenges. So, I'll throw it to you, Ramon, and also to you, Kevin. Are there some things in your life, perhaps some persistent obstacles that you faced as a black father that have been difficult for you? Perhaps difficult to reconcile, difficult to be able to address with your children, but perhaps are doing that now.
Yeah, I think for me, ever since maybe before my oldest was born, I was worried, I was concerned about my capability of fatherhood. Like, am I mentally, emotionally capable of doing the job? I did not have a father growing up, and the male role models in my life weren't exceptional. So I was concerned, like, did I did I know what I was doing? Like, like how bad was I gonna mess this up? Right? Like I don't. Um, so that was like, yeah, that was it. Like and it's always there. It's always
Yeah,
like
yeah.
always like I understand that. And I talked to my daughters about this, like, there's things that I'm gonna do that, 20 years from now, you might be upset about, you know. But just know that while I'm doing it, I have your best interests at heart. Like I think I'm doing the right thing. It's always the main thing is always the main thing to support you and to make your life good. Right? Like that's, so if I might mess up, right? I might and you might be upset with me 20 years from now, but hopefully you'll remember this little speech I gave when you were 14.
Right. Well, I will tell you one thing that will lessen your upsetting them, and that's called estate planning. Ramon, not to get morbid here, Ramon, what say you on this particular question as to vulnerability?
You know, I've told my kids this. I was scared to have sons because I have two older sisters. I have my mom, my grandmother, rest in peace. I have my aunt. Like, I had relationships with black women. Didn't really have relation like my stepfather was around, but he 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 didn't know how to do certain things. Um, and so I was also nervous about honestly bringing another black man into this country, like to be real. And I was like, nah, I'm just gonna have girls. And now I run a school for just boys, right? So it's like,
Hmm.
yeah, you're in it every day now. I think back to a couple things that we talked about, right? Um, I think the idea of talking to my kids as a black man about what it means to be black in America, my own personal experience. One of the things that I learned as I was doing it, and I was a DEI practitioner in independent school, so I was immersed in DEI work all the time, was making sure that I learned how to balance some of the hard history with the resiliency too.
Mm.
Like look, our people faced serious adversity across the diaspora, and our people persevered, and making sure that I offered those stories as well, because my wife was really good about this in terms of making sure you internalize the positive too, right? I don't, the message
Hmm.
can't just be it's been oppression, that's real, but you have to balance that with and look at what we've been able to accomplish in the face of
Hmm.
that oppression. Um, the other piece about the vulnerability, like my wife has told me that when I started doing my kids' hair along with her, because we have two,
Yeah.
one of my kids, I have a girl, and one of my kids is not binary. I uses they them, but my wife would do their hair every Sunday, both like detangle. So I'm talking about 6, 7 hours, both
Yeah.
combined. And at one point, it was like, "Yo, what's up? Like what you gonna do?" And
Right.
I had to learn how to detangle hair, and that was probably the best family experience for us because it was then be the four of us sitting in the living room, and we would switch kids every Sunday, and I had to learn how to like, bring the line, separate into sections, make sure I wetted it, moisturize, and then detangle, right? Like, and then talk about hair being connected to your blackness, right? Like,
Oh
let's
yeah.
get into it, right?
Yeah.
And so that, like she says, that saved our marriage, being able to do that every Sunday. The last thing I'll say is I think the biggest lesson I've learned is that my kids are not me. And that was a very hard lesson. Like my kids are not me, Ramon, they are Maya and Sophia, and they are individual people. They come from you and your wife, but you can't expect them to react in the way you did because frankly, luckily, they're not growing up the way that I did.
Well,
Right.
Ramon, I want to jump on that point, but before I do that, I have to say, I remember those days combing the children's hair and so on, and every time they fidgeted, the mom might pop them with the comb, right? You remember those days, so no more of that, no more, no more. But jumping on what you're saying, you don't want to overwhelm them. My very good friend, our executive producer, Ron West, talks about, and I don't know if I have it in the proper sequence, but he talks about purpose, priority, preparation, presentation, the 4 P's. He loves that. I called him the other day. I was like, hey, you want to go out to dinner? He was like, yeah, but first, let me get my purpose, priority, prep. I was like, enough, Ron. But with you guys, you heard of the 4 P's. How do you instill the values of purpose, priority, preparation, presentation in your children, going to what you're saying, Ramon, without overwhelming them?
I think and as you were saying that, I was putting things into my phone that I wanted to bring. Um one of the things I wish I would have known is at before becoming a father, one, what type of woman do I want around my kids? What type of woman do I want in my life?
Mm,
What are the values that, what values do we have as a p- possible family? How do we want to raise the kids? What religion, what schools, what sports, where do you want to live? How do you want to discipline? I think those are some of the things that you need to have prior to becoming a father,
yeah.
because it kind of gives you a little bit more of a roadmap of staying on a path. But I think it's really tough as a father, as a black father, to kind of just go into it, well, let's see what happens. I think it's really important as you have to have like a game plan. And I didn't have that game plan. So a
That
lot
that
of
that
times,
is that is purpose and priority,
exactly,
right? And
exactly.
preparation, super preparation.
Yeah, so a lot of times when it came to school decisions, it became a bump of heads. When it came to when they need to go to church, bump of heads. But I think those discussions need to be had. And, I think that makes it a little bit easier. It doesn't make it easy, but it makes it a little bit easier when it comes to building your family structure. And like Ramon
Hmm.
said, you want that household to be a safe place. And I think when the kids hear the bickering back and forth, because we weren't sure how we wanted to do things, it makes it tough. But when that home is a safe place, like Ramon was saying, it gives the kids a place to where they can be upfront and honest and talk to their parents about what they need and what they're going through, especially in these days and ages right now where they're faced with so much more than we ever had to
Oh yeah.
face. Home needs to be that safe space. And I think if you plan it out, I think your kids will feel free to come talk with you.
And be ready for the four P's. They can accept that a little bit easier. Kevin.
I think I think with the 4P, I think it's some lecturing, but it's mostly modeling.
Ah,
I've
yes.
been I think
Yes.
now I've gotten since in 2019, no, well, I started school in 21. I've been, I've had a full career for 20 years before that. But like Donovan was saying earlier, when you're working, it takes the kids to become adults to understand what's happening, like while
Mm-hmm.
you're not there.
Mm-hmm.
But school made that a little different, right? They see the grind, and they see me at the table, and they see me the equations, and they see me with the books and the homework. Um, I tried to model that before school too, like just in life in general, just you know what you want, you figure out how to get it, you work hard towards it, you have integrity, you're kind to people, all of these things. Um, yes, it's mostly modeling and hoping that at some point after they're past the turbulence of teenagedom, that some of these lessons, will come to fruition because it doesn't always appear right away. And as a parent, you might get frustrated, like they're not listening. But I remember, a lot of things that my mother taught me that I didn't listen to until I was, older. So I'm hoping for the same.
Yeah, and Ramon, coming from the Dominican Republic, Caribbean background, as some of us may have, I remember the four P's, though my father didn't use those specific words. His thing was if I came home with a 98 average, overall grade point average from high school, and said, "Look what I got." And he would say, "No, it's not good enough." And I would say, "Well, why isn't it good enough?" He said, "Because you didn't get 100." And I'm like, "Well, why do I need to get 100?" He said, "Because you are a black boy who will become a black man, and you will always have to do 10 times more or better." And that was the four P's in his own way, but it was overwhelming. It worked, but it was overwhelming. Where have you found the balance, Ramon?
I ask my kids, my kids at home, my students here, what's your plan? Like, what's your plan? Um, that's the one thing that I can offer them.
So you're
Like
not
that.
giving them the plan, you're asking them first.
I'll give them examples of plans that I've instituted in ways that like, for example, I lay out my clothes, I pick out my clothes for the whole week, pick out my suits for the week on Saturday, right? And I tell the boys that in the morning. My kids see me, right? So it's like, okay, this is the suit I'm wearing on Monday with this shirt, this tie, this pair of socks. And it's laid out then in my closet in order. So I don't have to think about it. I just go boom, boom, and then I put it in the living room. And I give that as an example of like, okay, I plan my outfits for the week. I don't have to think about that, right? I'm trying to free my mind for deeper
Mm-hmm.
thinking, right? So for my kids and for the students that I work with, it's that. It's like, what's your plan? Because it's kind of building. You're trying to build in some foresight, right? What are you thinking ahead? Like, what are some of the obstacles I'm going to face? And you can't plan for everything, obviously, but it's trying to get ahead of as much as you can. Because here's the thing: we have to think about so much more as Black. To Donovan's point, when I'm walking in the room, I'm sizing up the room because I'm trying to understand, okay, how is this person potentially interpreting me? What is this relationship like? I'm trying to do all that calculus just by when I'm walking in the room. So if I don't have to think about what socks I'm gonna wear, hey man, that may not sound like a big thing, but that's one
Right.
less thing that I have to think about, and it'll free my
That's
mind for
right.
me to be able to think deeper. So that's why I talk to them about what's your plan and then what does that look like for them.
That's right. To have the emotional capacity to be able to adapt to the situation and take over the situation. Well, one of the last questions I want to ask you guys, and certainly add in whatever you want to, is what legacy of fatherhood do you hope your children will carry forward, especially in a world that too often really does undervalue that legacy, the legacy of a Black man, the legacy of a Black person. And Donovan, why don't we start with you on that one?
I was hoping he started with somebody else because I was sitting here trying to think what legacy. Um, I think the biggest thing is being um a stand-up person, honest, um, someone that they can always look at and trust, um, someone who's always there that's going to be present, um, and someone who, is just and I'm trying to figure out the words for it, but I really believe that if you look back at my legacy, I'd really hope, someone where, my kids can say, hey, we trust dad. He was there for us. He's hardworking. And he's a man. He's the example of what a man should be. He took some punches. He was able to still get up, and he represented us as a family the right way.
That's beautiful, Donovan. Thank you so very much for sharing that. Because as we know, of course, from a psychological point of view, not only does it really enhance what our children have thought about us, but it's the gift that enhances what they think about themselves and who they partner up with, who they accept, how they love themselves to be in healthy relationships later on. And I would say, from what I can witness and what I know about you, Donovan, the job is getting done. Kevin,
Legacy. Um, that's-
you're still around. You're going to be around for a long time now, but
I
never,
mean,
never too early to think about legacy, my
um, I would like them to think that, or to say, or to feel that I was the best that I possibly could have been, that I was constantly trying to evaluate and improve as a human being. And yeah, I think that could go forever. But I think just I was there, fully invested in being the best I could be for them. And the best example, not just for them, just the best example of a man that I could be, the person that I needed when I was a kid. That's
Kevin. It makes me want to sing. I think you did your best, and your best was really good enough, and you are doing your best. Ramon,
Uh, I think of two words: growth and love. Right. The legacy I want to leave is that someone who kept working hard to get better and was willing to kind of examine their mistakes and keep growing as a man and as a person. Um, and then love, I think in the truest sense, love is really hard. To love is really hard because you're gonna be there always, right? You're gonna accept the positive, you're gonna accept the negative, you're gonna give, you're gonna receive. And so wanting to be remembered as someone who loved deeply, and who was able to receive that love too. Because sometimes I think as Black men, we struggle with receiving love, right? And so being able to offer it, um, and receive it. So growth and love will be the legacy that I would love to be behind.
As I hear you say these words as a Black father, I'm often reminded that what you're talking about, respect, empathy, love, kindness, in this culture, in a very warped way, are considered to be weaknesses. But I can tell you these are strengths, and these are the strengths as Black fathers we need to bring to the table to our children and to this society. Kevin Dillon, Donovan Mitchell, Ramón Javier, thank you so much for your wise words. Keep on doing what you're doing as Black fathers and certainly as fathers. And I want to thank you all for joining us today for the CUNY BMI Dialogue, Fatherhood, Joys, Challenges, Rewards of Raising Our Children. A very special thanks to our good friend Ron West, Special Projects Coordinator, CUNY BMI, writer and producer of this particular podcast, and of course, the captain, the one and only Jorge Alguera Esquire, University Assistant Director, CUNY BMI. Thank you all for joining us. We'll have another dialogue coming your way soon, so please stay tuned.